All right, my name is Mike Wagner, Wagner, and I'm a division chief with the Boulder Sheriff's Office.
If you could just start by telling us if there's any new information that you can share about the fire and how it's going today.
Yeah, we wanted to provide a little bit of an update with what information that we have. We don't have a significant update tonight, but I'd like to introduce Josh Schroyer. He's the fire operations guy for the incident management team to get a quick fire update, and then I want to touch on evacuation notices and some of the activity that happened today, and then answer any questions if there are any. So, Josh?
Got Josh Schroyer, Operations Section Chief Trainee with the team. Just quickly, the fire is doing great today as far as we're concerned. There is some activity. We expected that, but actually it's a little bit less activity than maybe what we had anticipated. Now, we still have the wind event that's coming in overnight, and so we do expect activity to pick up a bit, and we'll probably see some additional acreage growth overnight, but where we expect it to grow, we kind of expect that's where we're going to, that's what we think is going to happen. There is potential for it to get out, and that's going back to some of the evacuations that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But we're doing real well today. We're ready with our resources for any activity overnight, and what you're seeing mostly is just a little bit of our smoke, and most of it's from the East Troublesome fire. So it's looking ominous, but that's not our smoke, thankfully.
How many firefighters do you have working on the fire right now, and can you tell me how many agencies they're coming from?
I don't know how many agencies. We got them from all over, but yeah, we have quite a few hundred, to just give a ballpark.
Right now, I know that it was encroaching on some parts of Lyons, and parts of Lyons were told that they have to evacuate already. Is that the biggest concern as far as populated areas?
For now, yes. We've got, and again, that's in anticipation of this wind event. And I'll let more of the evacuation questions be taken care of over here. Operationally, we're feeling comfortable right now, but we don't want to be doing evacuations in the middle of the night.
How strong are the winds supposed to be tonight?
15, 20, maybe gusting to 30.
So not as bad as we saw a couple days ago up into the 50s and 60s.
Right, and the reason that we've got a red flag is because of this cold front. We've got some lower humidities. We're not going to get the humidity recovery tonight overnight. So we're not getting that recovery, and we've got the high winds. So that's kind of the combination of why we have the red flag going through the evening.
Are you optimistic about this weekend because we're anticipating snow and some really cold temperatures?
Yes, optimistic, but we can't rely on that because we've seen time and time again this year where we either don't get the weather that's forecast, or unfortunately we get the weather and then it turns around and gets warm and dry after that, and we're off to the races again. So we're looking for it. That's going to give us a chance to maybe be a little more tactical and get in a little tighter on some of this.
Do you have crews out there all night?
Yes, we will.
And if that fire, or if that snow does come, can that help to put out the fire?
Sure, it's going to add some moisture. It's going to reduce the intensity. It's not going to put out the fire, unfortunately. We're still going to have to keep working it. We're still going to have to be continuing to mop up those hot spots, getting in there and working those, but definitely it's going to help.
If you could put this into perspective for us, I mean, now we're like 5 days into this fire, moving in the right direction?
Yeah, we're comfortable with this. Unfortunately, we've had some bad, but considering all the fires we've had this year, this one's doing pretty good for us right now. We're making a lot of headway, good progress, good work on the ground, good cooperation with everybody, all the agencies, and yes, optimistic about the weather, hoping that soon we can give an update that we've turned a corner.
Can I have you spell your last name for us?
Schroyer, S-H-R-O-Y-E-R.
You said your first name's Jason?
Josh, J-O-S-H.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Oh, hold on. They have to make me taller. All right, thanks, Josh. One of the things I wanted to update and touch on was the Lions Park Estates evacuation that was issued earlier today. That order was issued just after noon in consultation with fire operations. The Sheriff's Office made the decision to evacuate Lions Park Estates, which does not include the town of Lyons. Lions Park Estates is a community or a neighborhood that's just south on Highway 7, South St. Vrain, outside of the town limits. The reason for that is with the forecasted wind event, the fire behavior, it became very concerning around the potential to need to do middle of the night evacuations. We wanted to give residents enough time where they could go, they could pack, gather important papers, things like that, get ready to go, try to winterize their house to the degree that they could. So they got about 2 hours notice. The evacuation order was effective at 2 p.m. We did have deputies that went door to door to make sure that everybody received the notification and were aware. And again, it's out of an abundance of caution. So we don't expect more evacuation orders to be necessary overnight. That was done in anticipation of that to make sure everybody was safe and not have to do a middle of the night, midnight, 2 a.m. Exodus out of town. So all in all, that was slightly over 200 additional residences and homes and several hundred people that are affected, which brings the total to just shy of about 2,000 residences total and about 3,500 people that are impacted under current evacuation orders. The current maps are up to date on boulderoem.com, so if you're not certain where your address falls, again, it's got that search utility we showed the other day. You can pull up the maps, you can drop a pin, see where your residence is, and see where you fall with in relationship to the fire perimeter, as well as the mandatory evacuation zones and the evacuation warning zones. So that's the Lions Park Estates updates. As far as reopenings and lifting of road closures and other evacuation areas, I wanted to touch on that. I know the sheriff addressed it last night in our community meeting. We had a team working on it all day. We are anticipating a number of different directions that could go. Unfortunately, with the scheduled forecast and kind of the fire behavior and combined with the level of containment and just the overall conditions, we were not able to open up anything else today. We do not expect anyone to be able to get home tonight and any of those evacuation orders to change. And our next check-in meeting with fire operations will be in the morning after they have a chance to assess conditions overnight tonight and figure out what the forecast looks like tomorrow, and we can get some additional assessment on how the fires behaved and what we think that might look like.
Is there any go ahead. Were you done?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, is there any update on the number of homes burned?
So we've had damage assessment teams. We've got no other reports of residential structures that have been lost or damaged. So the list remains at the 26 that were initially reported. We were able to get damage assessment teams into the entirety of the CalWood fire. As far as the heal, when I mentioned that update the other night, we had gotten about 75 or 80% of the CalWood perimeter, but had not been able to get into that far western edge. Investigators were able to do a hasty assessment, did not find any other residential structures. So right now, stands at 26 at the CalWood fire. We have no reports of residential structures lost still in the Lefthand fire. We've used assessors' data, so those are all primary residential listings and no reports there. The damage assessment team is a very formal process. It runs through our Emergency Operations Center. They will now go into the field as conditions allow, and they do much more of a ground level survey that's very intensive. It's far beyond the hasty one that we do, trying to get the public information as fast as possible. They go in and they're actually looking for, they're assessing debris, they're assessing damage to any building. So it could be an outbuilding, it could be a garage, something like that. And so that's principally what they'll do. That is a much longer, more involved process.
I know that there have been calls about people seeing smoke in different spots. Is that something that you guys are kind of dealing with now? Is there's so many fires, so much smoke? What is a new start?
Yeah, so we do appreciate smoke reports. We've gotten a number of calls this afternoon from the East Troublesome fire. We were able to get that information to fire personnel to go up and identify where the smoke was coming from and confirm we didn't have a new start. Obviously, it's concerning under these conditions. We don't want another fire to start. The Lefthand fire has added complexity to the CalWood fire because, again, it divides resources both for fire response and law response. So we take those things seriously. We really do want to make sure that any smoke report is investigated quickly.
You're telling people that they can't go in to winterize their home in the middle of a forest fire. I mean, there's heat, there's snow. I guess some people are worried about winterizing their homes, right?
Yeah, for those that maybe didn't hear the question, it was around winterizing homes and heat and fire. Yeah, it's kind of that odd dynamic of October where it's cold. Most of us are wearing jackets out here right now, and people are worried about my pipes are going to freeze, and I need to winterize my home, I need to shut my gas off, and it's in the middle of a fire. So we are cognizant of that. That is one of the things that we're evaluating is even if we can't reopen any of those mandatory evacuation areas, is there a window of time that we might be able to get residents in to where they can at least load up some more things, they can quickly do a very quick winterization, maybe open some drains, drain the water, deal with some propane, things like that, because we don't want anyone to suffer any more loss or damage than what's already happened. So that's really high on our radar. It is kind of a weird time of year that we're trying to winterize homes, and that's a concern for the areas that are unpopulated right now while we're in the middle of a fire.
Those 26 homes that have been lost, do those homeowners already know who they are?
Yes. So our investigators, before we publicly announced the list on, I believe it was Sunday, our investigators had tried to contact every owner of the home. We had talked to a majority of them. There were half a dozen or so off the top of my head that we had to leave messages for. And again, we just may not have had current contact info. Some of them could have been phone numbers that went directly to the residents, and with the residents being lost or destroyed, may not have had a functional phone, and we had no alternative contact.
With the Lion Park's estate being within 5 to 10 minutes from the actual town of Lyons, are you worried at some time in the near future you might have to start evacuating people in the town of Lyons?
At this point, the information we have from Fire Command is that it's not a concern. We have evacuated Lions Park Estates, which is the immediate concern, that if something were to happen on the northeast side of the fire tonight, that it would be difficult to get them out in a quick, timely manner. We constantly assess what the fire operations staff say and what their recommendations are. And so we actually have a law enforcement team that is out 24/7 with fire operations. So we have real-time information. We are prepared to evacuate if needed and have plans to do that, and so we can launch on a moment's notice, but we're hoping it's not necessary.
A lot of times, unfortunately, you're the bearer of bad news in press conferences like this. It seems like today is a pretty positive update, all things considered, right?
Yeah, all things considered, today's overall a great update. There was a little bit, the fire operations team announced a moderate growth overnight, a little bit of growth. But overall, considering the conditions and a red flag day, from the law enforcement perspective, we think it has gone really well. The Lyons residents that were impacted outside of town and Lyons Park Estates were very understanding around the concern for their safety. We know the community is anxious to get back home in other parts of the fire where they're evacuated, and they've been, for the most part, very patient and understanding. We know it's really difficult, and we want to get people home as soon as we possibly can because it does take a lot of resources. And so the community has been very understanding overall, and today I would say was a pretty good day.
It's a good way to end it.
All right.
I do have a question, actually.
Yes.
The people that evacuated today, do any of them still need shelter?
The question is that if anybody that evacuated today still needed shelter. There are shelters. I don't have specific numbers offhand. The Office of Emergency Management is helping to coordinate that. I can get you a number. I just don't know what that is offhand. But they are doing placements in local hotels for shelter for those that are impacted and don't have anywhere to go.